In 2021, Brain Freeze was released. It told the story of a zombie outbreak on an island caused by water pollution. The government quickly quarantined the island, but the residents had to fight for survival and escape the quarantine. Officials were seen spraying a new experimental fertilizer at a golf course on the island. The fertilizer was said to melt snow so the rich could play golf all year round. Dan, a sheriff, was on patrol duty and listening to a radio broadcast from an announcer named Patrick. Suddenly, he was startled by the appearance of Andre crossing the road. Dan warned Andre to be careful. To make matters worse, Andre had broken the red light. Patrick strongly disapproved of the golf course management's decision during the radio broadcast. He passionately believed that the decision went against nature and only served to fulfill the desires of the rich, causing a severe imbalance on the island. Upon arriving home, Andre excitedly grabbed a refreshing Coca-Cola and some delicious snacks to enjoy. He lived in the house with his adorable baby sister Annie and their babysitter Camilla. Camilla kindly mentioned that Andre's mom had not yet returned, but Andre was too caught up in his world to worry. Dan arrived at the office car park and called his daughter for a ride. However, while working as a caddy, Patricia could not leave as she still had something to do. Dan left for his home outside the island after moving a box of tissues to his car. Upon arriving, he collected and recorded all the supplies he had. Camilla had to leave, so she asked Andre to look after Annie since her mother had not returned. While at Dan's house, he tried to learn how to light fires traditionally, but failed. But he tried using gunpowder, resulting in a small explosion. Back to Andre, his younger sister was crying. He tried to comfort Annie but didn't understand what was wrong. Soon after, their mother, Jose, arrived home, along with Patricia, who found her father with a wounded face. Before leaving for work the next day, Jose prepared her vegetable juice using tap water. She then asked Andre to look after Annie again, as Camilla had not yet arrived. Although Andre begged Jose to take a day off, she said she had bills to pay and left to take her 2 children elsewhere. After dropping off Patricia, she had time to notice the golf course, which was not covered in snow. Meanwhile, Officer Michel invited the wealthy member Marcel to golf with his wife and dog. Andre was so engrossed at home and playing on his mobile phone that he didn't even notice Annie shaking the TV shelf. Luckily, he could hold on to the TV before it fell on his sister. Camilla had not yet arrived. In another location, a wealthy man named Jacques was getting dressed and asked for a glass of water to rinse his mouth while calling his wife. After rinsing his mouth, Jacques drank some water. While shopping, he felt dizzy, but he quickly returned to normal. Upon arriving home, his wife Amanda called him to join her in the bathtub. Jacques was surprised to see that his teeth had suddenly changed color. As he was about to go to Amanda, he turned into a zombie and quickly attacked her, catching her off guard. He then got into the bathtub and Amanda appeared to have changed. After completing their duties on the golf course, Patricia left Marcel. He was surprised by the peaceful atmosphere until someone suddenly ran out of the building, urging them to save themselves. At the same time, several zombies were seen chasing the person. Shortly after, their dog barked, prompting Marcel's wife to call out. Unfortunately, the dog had turned into a zombie and immediately attacked him. Michel and Marcel had to run away directly after releasing the dog's bite due to the arrival of zombies. Unfortunately, the dog had already bitten Marcel's leg. Marcel's wife, who had also turned into a zombie, was visible from inside. As a result, Marcel also turned into a zombie, and Michel had to find a place to hide. Dan returned to the woman who had called him. The woman reported that her neighbor was acting strangely and causing a commotion. Dan went to investigate and saw the person inside also acting strangely. Unfortunately, the woman who made the report turned into a zombie and tried to attack Dan, but he managed to get into his car and attempted to contact other officers for help. And even though there was no response, Dan remained determined to fight off the zombie threat. Due to his concern, he left a message for Patricia, who was also attempting to evade the zombie attack. As the number of zombies increased, Dan decided to depart. Meanwhile, at home, Andre, who had become calm upon the arrival of his mother, resumed enjoying his Coca-Cola. Subsequently, Jose requested that Andre prepare a bottle of milk for Annie. Andre's mother gave him an excellent tip for brewing water. Use mineral water from a bottle instead of tap water. Andre advised his mother to take a well-deserved break from work instead of relying on vegetable juice or antidepressant drugs, which he firmly believed were ineffective without proper rest. However, Jose unfortunately ignored his advice and later experienced dizziness. That night, Andre found his mother lying on the sofa and assumed she was peacefully asleep, so he did not check on her. It turned out that Jose had gotten up and tried to attack Andre when she heard the sound of his can. Halfway through contacting Patricia, Dan met Andre. Andre was startled when he accidentally stunned the zombie. He saw his mother still trying to get up and intended to help, but Dan warned him not to approach the zombie. Dan asked Andre to return home immediately and leave them. Meanwhile, other zombies arrived. Andre still didn't believe it. He tried to drag Jose back home. However, the police have closed the gate on the bridge connecting to the island. When Andre tried to call 911, he only received a message that their city had been quarantined and they were asked to stay at home. Andre found Jose trying to attack Annie and was forced to drag his mother back and lock her in the bathroom. As Annie's cries attracted more and more zombies to besiege their house, he was forced to hide under the doll. Eventually, the zombies dispersed. Patricia then activated her mobile phone and called Dan, who knew she was still alive. He instructed her to stay hidden until he arrived to pick her up. After some time, Dan came but had to fight several zombies outside the house. While watching outside, Andre was pleasantly surprised by the sudden appearance of his cat. And then, a zombie appeared out of nowhere, attempting to catch it. Luckily, the zombie was stuck and did not pursue Andre as he ran away. After the police left, the military cut off access to the bridge. The electricity went out the next day when Andre, who lived alone with Annie, had to learn to take care of her. Andre almost served it with tap water when he was about to make milk but remembered his mother's words. So, he made it with mineral water. From there, Andre intended to feed his mother with vegetables, but he didn't notice Annie crawling in. Suddenly, he saw the zombie trying to attack Annie, so he lured the zombie to follow him, but Annie followed the zombie. The zombie accidentally broke the shelf and ended up with a broken leg. Andre then returned his mom's body to the bathroom, where he noticed a worm coming out of the zombie's nose. And that's not all. He saw the zombie standing at the door. Then, while holding his younger brother, Andre deliberately provoked the zombies to chase the cat he was feeding. They were then rushed out. Unfortunately, the zombies chased Andre again. Finally, the two children were surrounded, but in that precarious moment, Dan pulled them inside. Inside this building, which was a natural food store, Dan said that they could not cross the river because all the boats had been hidden. When Andre tried to get some milk for Annie, they were again surprised by a caged zombie. But Dan said the zombie was Patricia, who he believed could still be cured. Michael tried to contact someone in another building who had been coded using a satellite phone to pick her up immediately. Unfortunately, the person on the telephone refused because they already had a protocol and asked him to wait because a team of experts from the central company was trying to overcome the outbreak that occurred. After much effort, Dan successfully lit the fire using traditional methods. Dan had prepared himself for any possibilities. And then, they heard Patrick on the radio, who announced the attacker was a virus, but it was unclear how it was transmitted. Finally, Patrick spoke with the security minister, Danielle Berger, over the phone. Danielle stated that the cause of the outbreak was still under investigation. Before any decisions could be made, Andre complained of a headache. Although Dan was prepared to assist, Andre claimed it was a typical headache caused by the cold temperature. Dan then contacted Patrick to inform him that he was uninfected on the island and that there may be other survivors who require assistance. However, Patrick requested that Dan explain how he knew he was not infected. Dan reported that his daughter was infected, and he was locked up with 2 other children who were still healthy. Patrick asked Dan to explain what happened before the government destroyed the island. Still, Dan did not know the cause and became angry, hanging up the phone. However, they realized they would not receive help and decided to survive without government assistance. Dan thought momentarily and predicted that the plague was transmitted through water. He believed that water could cause simultaneous infections. Andre confirmed that he had never drunk tap water. He indicated that a group of terrorists was the culprit. The following day, 2 armed twins arrived with suitcases. Meanwhile, Andre carried Annie and Dan carried zombie Patricia in silence. But unfortunately, Patricia went berserk. One zombie even attempted to attack Dan. Although Dan initially intended to finish off the zombie, he decided to leave it alone upon realizing that it was still a child and immediately ran away. Returning to the twins, they entered Maichi's golf building after defeating several zombies. Upon arrival, they encountered Michel. He was in the process of burning all documents related to their contract cooperation. He instructed them to destroy any remaining fertilizer. However, instead of complying, they handed her a suitcase which, unbeknownst to her, contained a smoke bomb. They then forced green pills into his mouth and dragged him away. Dan and Andre proceeded to the refinery, leaving Annie alone in the car to avoid disruptions caused by her cries. Inside the building, Patricia heard the sound of another zombie entering the water. She rushed towards the origin of the sound, and when she arrived, she went straight in. Dan tried to pull her back, but fortunately, the zombies in the water didn't attack Dan, who was holding Patricia. Upon hearing Andre's voice, the zombies began to chase him. Meanwhile, Patricia's hand suddenly broke free as she resisted Dan's pull. After attempting to escape, Andre finally managed to save himself by getting into the car. A few moments later, he emerged carrying Patricia and used her as camouflage until they were safely back in the car. While in the car, Dan commented that Patricia's limbs were as fragile as dead branches. Finally, Andre retrieved the cell phone from Patricia's pocket. He succeeded in using Patricia's hand to unlock the device. Since he didn't know the password, this was a huge relief. Andre attempted to record the zombies in front of them with her mobile phone, but Dan scolded Andre for his useless action. However, Andre noticed grass growing on the cut hand. He realized that the outbreak was not a terrorist attack, but originated from the golf course. The golf course was the only place where grass could grow in winter, which was a crucial clue in their investigation. The twin women started bombing the golf course. Dan and Andre arrived later, but found the building locked and received no answer to their call. Dan searched for an alternative route and asked Andre to watch Patricia. After entering the building through the roof, Dan contacted Andre and locked Patricia in a room due to her fragile condition. Andre gave his sister a pile of chairs to prevent her from leaving. Dan invited Andre to investigate the cause of the grass growth in that area during winter. After a long search, they found a dog covered in grass. They then heard a strange voice crying and asked Andrea to look after her sister while they continued searching. Upon arriving at the barricaded location, he discovered that Annie was no longer present. It appeared that the baby had crawled through a gap in the bench. During his search, he found gas cylinders that had been fitted with bombs. Suddenly, Dan felt dizzy and collapsed onto a pile of green picks. With his remaining consciousness, he attempted to turn off the detonator. Fortunately, Patricia managed to turn off the detonator using her handpiece. The twins who found the detonator decided to go back inside to find Annie, who was surviving in the kitchen. They saw that one of them had the heart to give the green pill to the baby. Shortly after, they heard Andre's voice, who was with Annie. As a result, the two rushed to hide. After finding their younger brother, Andre immediately held him but did not notice the green pill on the floor. Dan turned into a zombie. Andre was surrounded. Annie bit off the finger of the woman smothering him and attacked other women. In this chaos, Andre accidentally stepped on a smoke bomb that Annie had smoked before she ran away to avoid Dan. Unfortunately, Dan managed to catch Andre, but the zombie did not attack Andrea because he held zombie Annie. Then Andre took Dan's mobile phone and called Patricia's mobile phone. Meanwhile, the two women bitten earlier finally finished each other off. After finding Patricia's mobile phone, Andre immediately recorded that he was not infected. At the same time, infected people were attracted to water and sunlight. In addition, the investors' bodies were overgrown with grass. Andre also pointed out that his sister was infected, but if left unchecked, his sister would turn out like a dog with grass. The recording was included in the news broadcast watched by Camilla. Then, from his radio station, Patrick again asked what the security minister would do so that the outbreak on the island would not spread out. As a result, sometime later, Andre saw several military helicopters passing by. Finding paramilitaries on the streets, Andre became happy. Unfortunately, this was only for a moment because the military finished off one zombie that came, and it turned out that they also finished off other residents who were not infected. At the same time, Annie returned to normal and immediately cried, awakening Andre to save himself directly. Elsewhere, Dan also returned to normal. The worst thing was that the military who found the two immediately burned them. So maybe Dan also sucked in the smoke from the bomb that was stepped on from earlier so that he could return to normal. At the same time, Andre saw people on the boat, and when he approached, it turned out that Camilla was the one who had come. At the same time, Patrick was watching the government, who made an announcement that they managed to overcome the zombie outbreak on the island so that it did not spread out without any significant problems. But he was seen drinking water from a glass with the M logo, which was the company's symbol. So there was a possibility that this official was corrupt. On the way, Andre threw Patricia's handpieces into the water, which were then eaten by a fish and turned into a zombie. So what did you think of this movie? Leave it in the comments below, and if you liked the video, please like and subscribe for more movie recaps. See you in the next video.